Hi guys, welcome to my mini series on the good, the bad, and ugly of sales and marketing. This is part 2, and we are going to be talking about women, because I'm a woman, and it's how to be a woman in a man's world, or what it's like to be a woman in a man's world. And what I mean by a man's world is sales and marketing is predominantly male-driven industry, and it still is today. I don't see the numbers dwindling too fast, so it looks like it's going to be predominantly male for a very long time. And what's funny is that in network marketing, it's actually predominantly women. So it's a weird kind of shift that's happening between network marketing and traditional marketing and sales. And I think that a lot of the reasons for network marketing is because you have companies like Avon and Mary Kay, Tupperware, Scentsy, all these different companies that are driven towards women and these home parties. So it's kind of been built for women per se. So a lot of these companies in network marketing, especially the larger ones, the giants that have been around for a while, are geared towards women. And that's what it started off as, is for women to be able to, be the Joan Cleaver and be able to walk around and sell Tupperware to their neighbors or perfume or whatever it was. So that's why this industry tends to be a little bit more predominantly women. But in sales and marketing, you have mostly men. And when I'm talking about sales and marketing, I'm talking about advertising, traditional sales, outside sales, things like that. You're going to see mostly men. And I come from both. I've been in traditional sales. I've also been in network marketing. And it's definitely, you can see the difference. And what's funny is that if you look at the top 100 list, businessperson.org has a good list, the top 100 income earners. You see either men or married couples, and I think you see like 1 or 2 women. You don't see women. And it's interesting because you see a lot of times if there's a woman in the relationship, they end up bringing their husbands in, but it's not necessarily the other way around. So that's kind of the statistics with network marketing. As far as sales and marketing goes, as far as it goes in the business place altogether, the numbers are pretty impressive in a negative way. The numbers are 5% of women are in the CEO position of Fortune 500 companies and 4.9% of Fortune 1000 companies. So that's an extremely low number, 5%, and it's the numbers of women that are staying at home with their family, being a stay-at-home mom, is actually increasing. It was like 2009, I think the number was 21%, and now we're up to 23%. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, it's probably because of the recession, the economy. A lot of the times it's that there was just not the jobs available, so you see that number increasing in that reason. But I also see that a lot of women, I think what happened with the economy recently is that you've seen a lot of women who said, you know what, they looked at it and said, time is more important, family is more important. Yes, we're struggling financially, but I'd rather be at home. And I see a lot of people making these decisions. Stay-at-home dads are actually increasing in percentage, but not that much. It's just less than 1%. As opposed to the 21%, 23% of women that are staying at home with their families. What I wanted to talk about, besides being a woman in a man's world, and I actually wrote a chapter on this in my book, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly of Sales and Marketing. And if you guys want to pre-order that, you can go to www.theaccidentalwriter.com, www.theaccidentalwriter.com. Pre-order it. The first 500 copies, you get a signed copy. It's worldwide shipping. So go ahead and pre-order it. But I actually talk on this in a chapter in there. And when I first got started in the business world, I kept hearing the comments, women's empowerment, and you should speak to like women's groups, and you should, like when I was trying to figure out what my brand would be, it would be, oh, you should do something with being a mom. And I remember feeling annoyed by it because it was just really kind of like, really, is that the only thing that we can identify ourselves as or separate ourselves from the group? And every time somebody would bring up women's empowerment and, doing these kind of events, and I just kind of got this whole negative feminist vibe. I'm not saying feminist is a negative thing. I'm saying, but I got that kind of negative, like that negative impression you get from a lot of people get. And I was just like, I don't want to do that because I don't want to be a female role model. I want to be a business role model. I want to be a role model. I want to be not the top female income earner. I want to be the top income earner. I didn't want to be the top female sales. I wanted to be the top sales. Like if I'm going to reach the top, I wanted to do it because of who I was, not because I was a woman. And I felt like for me, by automatically doing that, you're saying that, well, women weren't going to be good enough, so we're going to give them kind of a subgroup. And I realized that later on in my career that I was misreading that because that's not the case at all. And I kind of had a series of small epiphanies that led up to kind of the one big aha moment. And I remember it was probably about 7 years ago. I was flying to Las Vegas and flying with a colleague of mine. And I remember we were going to a business convention. It was a weekend thing. And it was just a 2-day weekend, not a big deal trip. Vegas is, 45-minute flight from here, and I didn't think anything of it. And I'm sitting there next to this woman I work with, and she was telling me how she barely even made it on the plane, and she barely even got permission to get on the airplane. I was kind of looked at her, and I said, wait, did you just say permission? And this woman's twice my age at the time. Well, I guess she still is, but this is like 7-8 years ago. And I looked at her and I'm just like, what do you mean by permission? And I'm like, do you live with your parents? Like, I didn't understand what was happening. And it didn't dawn on me what she meant. And she's like, oh, my husband, doesn't take care of the kids and I have to find a babysitter. And, and at the time I didn't have my son. He wasn't born yet. And I was like, wait, your husband doesn't take care of the kids? I don't understand. Aren't they his kids? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. I grew up with my dad. My mom would, if she was busy working or whatever, my dad would watch me. So it was kind of a strange thing, and I just didn't understand where she was coming from. And she said she had to get permission to go on this business trip. And I was like, you really do need to get permission to work? You have to get permission to have somebody watch your kids? And that was kind of the first little nugget of a wake-up call that I got. And I found out that it wasn't as unusual as I thought. I thought that she was kind of the exception to the rule. And then I started excelling in my career and going down the path and meeting more and more women who reached out to me, and I found that that was actually more common than I expected. I actually met a lot of women who would ask me, how do you get your husband to let you be a business person? And I was just like, well, I don't ask. It was just that simple. I don't ask. I don't get permission. He doesn't need my permission to do things. I don't need his permission to do things. And it's kind of just how it's always been. I met my husband in a business seminar. So I don't know if that changes things. He met me as a business person, but still, I didn't understand this question. And then I said, what do you mean by let? He's like, how do they not let you do it? I understand there needs to be a conversation because you've got children or you've got responsibilities at home and things like that. And I hope I'm not offending anybody by having this conversation, but I just wanted to share my ignorance because I really didn't understand the struggles that a lot of women were still going through today. And it was several wake-up calls before I really began to understand that it's commonplace and that it's not unusual for women to struggle with trying to get just to even start their own business, even if it's a crafting business at home. And it was a series of all these different events, meeting all these different women and waking up and opening up my eyes to how ignorant I was to what was going on. And then I realized what women's empowerment really was. And I realized at the time that I may not have needed it, which meant that I should be contributing to it. And I realized that I was also selfish because I was looking at it, I was like, well, I don't need that. I'm totally fine in a man's world. I don't care what they think. I'm just there trying to get the sales. I'm there trying to climb the ladder like everybody else. It didn't matter. And I didn't have any of that. And I realized that I come from a family of strong businesswomen. So I've never been surrounded or oppressed in that way. So for me, I didn't need it. And I felt like, well, if I don't need it, then it's not needed. And fortunately, I had my eyes opened to the situation and realized that it is a necessity out there. There are a lot of women, even young women today. It's not a generational thing. At first, I thought it was, because when that first happened with the lady, my friend on the way to Las Vegas, I thought, oh, maybe it's a generational thing. But it's not. It wasn't, because a lot of them, these women are 10 years younger than me. They're still struggling with this. And I realized that's what women's empowerment was. It wasn't this whole hoorah type of thing, hear me roar. It's not this whole, I want to be the top woman to do this. It was literally just, listen, if I can do it, you can do it. And linking up arms with your fellow female and saying, you can do this, you should do this. And so that was kind of the awakening for me as far as women's empowerment goes. And I've also come to realize since becoming a mom that there are struggles that we have that are very different from the men out there. There are a lot of men out there who have no problem going to work. They don't have the guilt. And I've read a lot of articles on this, especially recently with writing the book. I was doing some research on it, and I read a lot of these articles saying that the biggest issue with women is the guilt that we associate with staying at home or working. It works both ways. There's guilt either way. If a woman chooses to go to work and put her child in daycare, there's guilt. If a woman chooses to stay at home, there's guilt because she feels like she's not maybe doing enough or she's not doing it right. There was guilt associated either way. And then there's even guilt with a woman wants to go and get her nails done and she needs that me time. We all need me time, don't we? I mean, come on. We all need personal time. We need a break to just be able to breathe again. But then when we take that break, we feel guilty about it. But if we don't take the break, then we feel run down and we feel guilty about feeling run down. And I don't know where this is stemmed from. If you guys have an idea of where you think this is coming from, where this guilt is coming from, I don't know if it's a maternal instinct, leave it in the comments in the video because I'm curious to see your thoughts on this. What do you think is the reason that we feel guilty? Whatever decisions we make, there seems to be guilt associated with it. And it's not just in the workplace. It seems to be something that happens quite often. And I want to, I wanted to do a video on what it's like to be a woman in a man's world. It wasn't just so I can sit here and talk about, I'm this woman, I'm this business woman, hear me roar type of thing. I want to open up the dialogue. And because I think I see a lot of these women who want to become business women, but they have this whole, well, I've got to stay home with the kids. And if you're anything like I was, I had the same feeling. I thought growing up, I was always a career person. I was not one of those women growing up that said, oh, you know, I pictured my wedding and I wanted to get married to Prince Charming. I wasn't that person. My visions were wrapped around my career. And I don't know if it's because of the upbringing, because I actually grew up with a lot of business women, my cousins, my mom, all business women, all strong women. And so I think my perspective was a little different. But when I became a mom, something shifted for me. And I remember being home on maternity leave. I was working in corporate America at the time in sales. And I was at home. And I remember when my 9 weeks was up, I literally cried the entire week before I went back to work because I was petrified of leaving my tiny infant son in the arms of strangers. I don't know if it was maternal instinct. I know a lot of women said, I could not wait to get off maternity leave and get back to work. I don't know if it was because my son was super easy, but it was just something that was super difficult for me. And I remember I said, this isn't going to work for me. I can't do this anymore. And that's when I had the conversation with my husband, like, what should we do? Because I don't want to go to work with my son in daycare. I want to be home with him. And So we thought we talked about it. I started my own business. 9 months later, I was able to stay home with him. We had to make some financial sacrifices, but for us, it was worth it. And my husband was on the same page. He wanted somebody that he trusted watching our son, and that person was me. And we both wanted him to be home with me. So that's what changed for me, and that's what kind of propelled my career in this different direction, because my son is starting school in 2 months. And so I've been a work-at-home mom for 5 years now, and to me, I would not have it any other way. But there is always that guilt associated with it. Because I'm not a stay-at-home mom, I'm not a working mom, I'm a work-at-home mom, so there's guilt with that. You would think there wouldn't be, because stay-at-home moms have guilt, working moms have guilt. So a stay-at-home working mom shouldn't have guilt because they're doing both things, but it wasn't the case, because I always felt like I wasn't giving enough to my son. I always felt like I wasn't giving enough to my career because I'm trying to do this work-life balance. And so there's always this guilt associated with it. And so I'm asking you guys to have this dialogue and this conversation to find out what is it that you think is causing this guilt, because I would love to further explore this and maybe figure out what's going on, because I think that's where women's empowerment comes in, is we say, okay, where are we struggling, and let's figure this out and let's move forward. And we put so much on our own shoulders. Now, you guys can see right here, this is my Twitter handle. I'm TM Williams. If you guys have any specific questions or comments at any time during this is actually going to be a super short video tonight. Go ahead and send me a tweet there. Tweet. Is that what you say, tweet? I think that's right. I am seriously exhausted today. I could not sleep last night, and so probably not making too much sense. But go ahead and send me a message on Twitter, either direct message or, however you want to do it. And if you have any questions or comments about this, but leave any comments in the video as well, because I know most of you guys will be watching a recording of this. We're live right now. But if you're watching the recording, leave a comment. I'm going to check back and see what your comments are about this whole thing, because I'm very interested to see what you guys have to say. I'm seeing right here. Okay, I was just checking my Twitter, and one person mentioned that they've dealt with that because they were in the military as a woman. That's probably the epitome of a woman in a man's world, is being in the military. So it's definitely still today a male-dominant industry, and I think there's a lot of them out there that women are breaking into. And I personally believe, and you feel free to disagree with me, I actually believe that men don't hold back women as much as women hold themselves back. I completely believe that we are our biggest culprit of holding ourselves back. I think that is our problem. I know there's men out there that definitely do, but I definitely think that women tend to be their biggest critics and hold ourselves back. Is chauvinism still alive? Yeah. Unfortunately, chauvinism is very alive, and I'm going to share what happened actually just within the last year with me. I was wanting to, there was a startup company that was launching about a year ago, and I wanted to turn in my resume for the CEO position. And the founder of the company called me and said, you know what? I don't think you can handle this because you're staying at home with your son, and I don't see how you're going to handle both the CEO position and raising your son. And I remember when I heard that statement, I was so stunned by the statement that I literally just said, okay, because I had no idea how to respond, because in my mind I was like, wait a minute. First of all, that should be my problem to figure out if I feel like I can handle this position. But I assume that most people who are applying for a CEO position are at the age where they probably have a child or more than one child. I know there's a lot of people out there that don't, but I mean, my question was, are you specifically looking for people without a family? And sure enough, they end up hiring somebody who's a male and certainly had kids. So it was definitely something that happened. About a couple of weeks ago, I took a colleague out to lunch It was a pre-arranged business luncheon, and it was pre-arranged. I was going to take them out to lunch because they're an expert in their field. I would take them out to lunch to pick their brain. That was kind of my thank you. Like, I'll take you to lunch, you let me pick your brain, and that was it. And the server actually refused to give me the bill. And I was literally reaching across the table to try to grab the bill, and the server literally like leaned back with the bill pressed against him and wouldn't give me the bill. And I was just sitting there with my mouth hanging open, and there's not much you can do because, you know, you're at this luncheon with this individual who, it was the second time I met them, so, you know, you're kind of trying to be proper at the same time. You're trying to be formal and not make a scene, and I just didn't know. I was literally appalled. I had no idea what to do. And it was unfortunate because it was such a productive and great lunch meeting, and that kind of left the lunch meeting with a really sour taste. And I actually emailed my guest later on and said, I apologize. I was fully intending to pay for the lunch. And he said, no, I understand. You know, unfortunately, I've seen that happen too many times as well. And he completely understood. You know, so definitely happens. It happens quite often. I've been turned over for speaking engagements because they want to have a strong male voice. So there are definitely things working against us in the female world. What do we need to do? We need to just keep moving forward. We're not ones to stop because there's a challenge presented at us. It's never been the case. I've never seen a woman say, oh, that's too challenging, I'm not going to do it. That's one thing that we do have that's a great strength as a woman is we don't care. Multitasking, challenges, whatever it is, we will move forward. And so I think it's actually something that we are progressing. I don't believe we're moving backwards. I believe we're moving forwards. If you guys disagree, please let me know in the comments because that's my feeling. Is it still a struggle? It's not as much as a struggle as it was for our mother's generation, and I don't think it's going to be as much of a struggle as it's for our daughter's generation. But I think that is still something that we need to talk about, and I think that's why women's empowerment is still around, and I think it's a good thing to have. And it's until we do have a grasp on this, which may be probably, could be never, it could be within the next generation, we should continue to embrace ourselves in groups like that, to continue to reach out to each other as sisters and say, you know what, you've got this, and to lift each other up. And it's something that I think is that's needed in the business world, and perhaps will progress a little bit faster because of it. I want to thank you guys for joining. Like I said, this was going to be a short session. This is a chapter in my book. I go into a little bit more. But please go ahead, pre-order the book, The Good, the Bad, and Ugly of Sales and Marketing. It's a very lighthearted read. I don't hold back. I've had a couple people pre-read it already, and they said that they were laughing reading it. So it was my goal. They weren't laughing at me. They're laughing with the book, which is a good sign. So hopefully you guys go ahead and pre-order. I promise. I think you'll love it. It's a very light read, and I talk about the ugly stuff in there too. I don't hold back. I tell it like it is because I've always appreciated when people did that with me, so I try to pass that on as well. If you guys like these sessions, if you like me continuing to do that, please give me a thumbs up on this video so I know that you like it. You're giving me the A-OK. You know, hey, please keep doing them. And if you don't like them, then I'll stop doing them. I don't want to do something that people don't like me to do. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. If you have any questions, you can send me a message on Twitter, or you can find me on Facebook, or you can email me, tina@thebloggoddess.com. But I thank you guys for joining me live. I see a few of you are actually on live watching. And if you're watching the recording, I thank you as well. And I will see you on the next Hangout.